Many of us fondly know and remember the days of the classic Sonic the Hedgehog video games, featured on consoles such as the Genesis and Dreamcast. However, the maker behind the machine of Sonic, Sega, actually once operated a few indoor theme parks in the late 1990s to early 2000s. This is the story of the gone, but not forgotten, Sega World, London.
Something wonderful is happening. Something magic. Something that will change the way you think about high-tech entertainment. Sega World is coming to the Trocadero Piccadilly Circus in London. Welcome to the next generation of indoor entertainment. Sega, the brand leader in interactive entertainment for the entire family, is proud to announce the opening of Sega World at the Trocadero in London's Piccadilly Circus.
For historical context, we must first examine the uprising that made Sega what it once was, and how Sega World came to be. Both Sega Japan and Sega of America had seen exponential growth and success, as the original business model of arcade-based video games, specifically the massive success that was the Sega Genesis in the early to mid-1990s. Sega's biggest competition was that of Nintendo.
The Sega Genesis has blast processing. Super Nintendo doesn't. So what's blast processing do? What if you don't have blast processing?
Wanting to bring a mascot-type character to rival Mario, Sonic the Hedgehog was born in 1991. This led to a string of years of growth like no other. More titles, consoles, magazines, subscription services, and more, all leading to Sega and Sonic alike becoming beloved household names. Wanting to expand even more around the world, Sega would go on to open a couple of lucrative cash cows, using the Sega World name, quoting them as a family-oriented amusement facilities. Seeing the success in a rapid, expansive time for the company, Sega set out to build upon the newly popular Sega World branding. Construction for Sega World London officially began in late 1995, using 100 square feet of flooring on top of a reported £45 million on creation for the new indoor park. Over the following year into 1996, Sega would go on to build anticipation for the new park in a number of gaming magazines and stage press events centered around the construction of the park. Following this, Pepsi-Cola was chosen to sponsor the center in the weeks leading to opening, which allowed for even more eyes on the new park. Initially planned to open in summer of 1996, construction delays led for Sega World to officially open to the public on the 7th of September, 1996. At the grand opening, celebrities such as Robbie Williams, Anika Rice, and Jarvis Cocker would make appearances to warrant even more media attention. The opening wasn't a disaster by any means. However, the initial reaction by guests wasn't where Sega's expectations really were. Some common frustrations made by guests were that the queues to the individual arcade games are long, even though Sega promised this would not be a problem. In addition, each attraction required a certain amount of coins to operate and enjoy. This caused a natural backlash, as guests saw this as a money-making technique, while not focusing on developing a park with the best guest intentions in mind. Over the first few months of operation, neutral to negative reviews would continue to pour in. Even more common complaints were connected to overpriced entry fees and a lack of enthusiasm within certain rides and attractions. Despite this, Sega World moved forward by attempting to wow guests with many interactive simulated ride experiences. Sega World would go on to feature such attractions as the poorly received Beast in Darkness, which was nothing more than a standard haunted house, which didn't feature any Sega-based intellectual property characters. Away from this, the indoor park also featured the main attraction of VR1 Space Mission, where 8 hydraulic pods and the Mega Visor display headset offered a virtual reality experience to riders. It became obvious quickly that a park called Sega World was really missing out on the Sega aspect, a lackluster ride experience not featuring any Sega-based characters. While Sonic was placed at the park, everyone's favorite hedgehog was not given a ride of his own. Sega World was ultimately divided into 6 areas, over the massive indoor center featuring over 4 total floors, first of which was simply the reception, offering photo opportunities and a large Sonic mascot character. Next was the combat zone, which featured over 50 action-based games and oddly enough, no attractions. Following this was the racetrack area, which featured over 70 driving games and an Aqua Planet attraction. Next, Flight Deck offered over 20 air combat games and was home to the VR-1 Space Mission attraction. The Haunted House attraction mentioned before was located within the Carnival area, which also featured a Sega Kids area and an on-site McDonald's. And lastly, the sports area, featuring over 90 sports games and a large surfing Sonic the Hedgehog statue, and a sports bar as well. The initial plans for Sega World was to expand rapidly across Europe and ultimately the rest of the world. However, given the performance of Sega World London, only one other park outside of Japan and the United Kingdom would open, that being of Sega World Sydney. As the decade came to a close, Sega of America and Sega of Japan were having a heated battle for the direction of the company, a turning point that would affect Sega World indefinitely. Sega was in the market for a new console to succeed that of the Genesis. In short, the final product becoming the Sega Saturn created a damper for the company as a whole. This would lead to the revolutionary yet financially struggled Sega Dreamcast to release a few years later. The indecisiveness of the corporate world of Sega led to uncertainty for the company as a whole. Back-to-back financial failures of the home consoles would go on to diminish the reputation of Sega. In response to the complaints and wanting to keep the indoor park alive, admission was brought down to only £2, with most arcade consoles turned to free-to-play. This decision would financially backfire, with the intended 1.75 million yearly guests would not happen by the end of 1997. On top of this, many rides reported a breakdown often, causing even more financial ruin for Sega. By the end of 1997, admission for the indoor park was made completely free, essentially becoming a large-scale arcade with a couple of rides and attractions. By the end of the year, many new arcade games would be tested and brought into the park. However, not many rides would be added at all, stalemating the park's dwindling experiences. By 1998, Sega World had missed its projected profit margin of £3 million, which was a major stipulation for Sega and a deal made within the property owners for Sega to operate the theme park. A new bar was added to the park on the 4th floor. This was seen as a last-ditch effort to attract new guests. 3 years to the day, on the 7th of September 1999, Sega officially announced that they would be pulling out of the Sega World joint venture that was created alongside Chorion, beginning on the 12th of September that year. Over the remaining months of the year, Sega World would be completely extracted from its building, which would become used as another family-oriented place of entertainment. By early 2000, all remaining attractions and naming of Sega World had been completely removed. This move ultimately was doomed from the start. Sega as a whole was struggling. Many games and consoles, the main attraction of the company, were failing. Despite the investments made into the indoor park, a multi-floor arcade with little to no Sega-branded recognition outside that of Sonic the Hedgehog simply wasn't enough to garnish a consistent crowd. As we fast forward in time, Sega would close all Sega World locations not located inside of Japan no later than 2010, as well as exit the console wars in 2001. What could have been a real game-changer of indoor music parks throughout the entire world was simply mismanaged from a corporate level since launch. However, the fondness and intrigue of the park will forever be remembered. Hey everyone, thanks for checking back in for this episode of Discover. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Follow us on all of our social media outlets to stay up to date on all of our content creation and news. We would like to thank each and every single one of you for your support of our channel. Don't forget to come back for our Season 1 finale of Discover, as we discuss the cancelled 20th Century Fox World. Don't want to miss it. And until next time, happy discovering.